Addio, mia bella Napoli, addio, addio.
Ciao ragazzi, and benvenuti to the 24th episode of In the Shadow of Vesuvio. My name is Henry Bell, and I am broadcasting from the west coast of Scotland during a spectacular sunset and a frosty patch of weather here. But in the shadow of Vesuvio is my co-host Michele Borelli at Napoli Tickets on Twitter. Michele, how are you? How's Napoli? Yo.
Hello, Henry. Hello, everyone. It's been a while, no? It's been, like 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Everything fine here. It's frosty as well. I mean, probably not as cold as Scotland. It's going to be, I think right now it's about 15 degrees.
Oh,
like that.
Come on.
Yeah, man. It's freezing. It's free.
It's naught here. Zero degree.
Yeah, well, I'm actually going to Paris in 2 days, and it's going to be 0 degrees there too. So I'm not
Paris?
mentally, just
Parigi.
random. Yeah,
Per
just
Michele.
a random trip. Just a random trip. You know that in Paris, they actually have, in PSG Stadium, they have a stadium stand with my name.
The Michele Borelli stand.
Well, not quite as complete as that, but they have a Borrell tribune, which is obviously my honor. I mean, it's
one day the Stadio Diego Armando Maradona, all 4 stands will be named after you, I'm sure.
Yeah, the Get Napoli Tickets Stadium. Yes.
But I just want one cubicle of a toilet named after me one day. That's all I ask for. If they ever redo them. More on that later, listeners. Anyway, so it's been a while. There's a World Cup on, as some people might have noticed, and so there isn't Serie A action. But we have a very full sack of listeners' questions. Father Christmas himself, if you believe in such things, would struggle to carry a sack of this proportions. So we're going to be mostly going through those questions today. But before we do, what is number 24 in the Napoli Tombola, Michele?
Oh, number 24 is a juicy one. Number 24 is Le Guardie, e Guardie in Neapolitan, which is a very common way. So basically in English it would be the guards, right? But it's a common way in Napoli to say the police. So if you see the police, you wouldn't say, oh, here's the police. But in Napolitan you would say e Guardie, the guards. And I think it's quite appropriate for this week, no? What do you think?
Well, we can't go any further without talking about our dear friends in Turin of Juventus, who, as many of you may be aware, have got into a spot of bother, which is very out of character for them, isn't it, Michele, as a football club? They've been such an upstanding moral force of good in world football for so long. And so, I mean, me, like many people around the world, were hugely shocked to see some of these allegations. What has the reaction been like in Naples to the news of Juventus's financial misdealings and the resignation of the entire board and Mr. Agnelli?
Yes, absolutely shocked. It shocked everyone, but there is a first time for every team, like they couldn't be, that clean all the time. So today is their turn. And no, but jokes aside, it's like, I think we kind of feel vindicated, all of us. It's still early. I'm not that confident that actually something is going to come out of it. But it's, I'm reading about it every day because the people who know what's going on agree that it's very serious. So lawyers, magistrates, people working in the judicial system, they actually, everyone, like when they give interviews, they are all saying the same thing. This is actually worse than you imagine. And it's hard to imagine worse than what people are talking about right now, because there's already talk of, relegating them to Serie B, banning them from, just giving them like 10, 15 points of penalty for this league, for this year, for this season. And people who actually know what's going on are claiming that it's actually worse. So, fingers crossed. But it's actually quite a complicated issue because it's a lot of people. So basically, what I've seen, even among Napoli fans, is well, not in Napoli, let's say, but it's like on Twitter and people from other countries who support Napoli. They've split into two factions. So the majority are saying, like finally they caught them, fuck Juventus and stuff like that. And there's another faction, Juve Merda, yes. And there's another faction, which is the faction of the people saying, this is not good. This is not going to be good for the league, and they are quite worried about what's going to happen to Juventus, which is, I don't know how to describe that. I don't know.
It's the most bizarre take ever that in this version of reality, we should let Juventus do whatever the hell they like because it's somehow good for the league. Like, if you think about, and actually they were at the center of turning down a major TV deal because of the European Super League, weren't they? I think there was like an 800 million offer for TV rights about 18 months ago that Agnelli was at the center of saying no to because of his plans for the European Super League. So the fact is, in my humble opinion, Michele, it's not the idea that Juventus is good for the league. Juventus is bad for the league. Juventus is bad for Serie A. Agnelli's at the center of this immensely divisive notion of the European Super League. And Calciopoli created a laughing stock of Serie A. People still don't really take sometimes things seriously. When Juventus won 9 titles in a row, people were still asking questions and stuff. So they've been a stain on the league, I would say. So I'm very much not in that camp myself. How about you?
No, man. No, but it doesn't make any sense, because even if they're cheating, then you want them caught. Because if you don't want them caught, then what are we doing here? What's the point of supporting Napoli in a league that is not fair? We're just supporting Napoli for the sake of it. We're just wasting time here. I don't want Napoli. Napoli mustn't win. It's not like Juventus, their motto, winning is all that counts, which is showing right now.
Mm-hmm.
But, at least I want Napoli to compete. And there is no competing if there is no fairness, right? So, yes, I do agree that the consequences for Serie A as a whole are going to be devastating, but it's not the police fault. They're not the ones cheating. Blame Juventus. Don't blame the ones catching them in the act.
But it doesn't make sense because you have clubs like Roma, even Lazio, Inter, Milan. These, and obviously us in Naples, these are big, recognizable clubs that, on paper at least, have the infrastructure and the global recognition to carry a league. A lot of Premier League teams would kill for the sort of brand recognition that Roma get. The problem is parity in TV rights and all sorts of things. So, I think that there's enough iconic clubs in Italy for it to be fine. Perhaps there might be a short-term hit in terms of things. A lot of people do support Juventus all around the country as well, which is a bit of an issue, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 40% of everyone who supports a football team in Italy supports Juventus. So it's we are losing, if they are okay, this is beyond my wildest dreams, but if they actually ban Juventus altogether, if they actually disqualify Juventus,
delete Juventus.
Yeah, just cancel Juventus at all, which is, I can only dream of a day like that. But yeah, in theory, obviously, you're going to lose 40% of all football fans in the country, which means that obviously 40% of people wouldn't pay for, pay TV anymore. And obviously the whole country is going to take a hit. But again, is it worth competing in a league which is not fair? Are Napoli fans really more concerned about Serie A's reputation than Napoli's reputation? And Napoli's, you would let Juventus win dirty Scudetti just for Napoli not to lose money? What's the point? I honestly don't understand these motives. And
and it shows you how serious the crime is as well, Michele. So actually, imagine you're Agnelli and you're doing these things and you know that they're wrong if these things are proven to be true. And you know the consequences, and yet you carry on. That isn't the league's fault. that's on him and the people around him.
Yeah,
I mean,
but it's becoming even worse now. I mean, I'm reading about this every day, and obviously there are news every day about this scandal, and the trial hasn't even started yet. So I mean, it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be big. There's a part of me, as you know, doesn't believe, and in this case, believing means Juventus actually, being accountable for what they've done, and Agnelli and Nedved and everyone else. But it's becoming quite big, and it's actually involving a lot of other teams. And it's, again, as I said, I feel vindicated because we've been saying this thing. I mean, it was quite clear, right? I mean, now it wasn't really a conspiracy theory to say that there were, let's say, satellite teams around Juventus. It's teams who did everything Juventus told them to do. I would say the real conspiracy was claiming that these teams lost because Juventus told them to lose. I don't fully believe that, but I do believe that the managers of these teams were actually I don't want to say corrupted. How do you want to say, like, Juventus allies, let's say, like that, and they've actually have proof now of that. I mean, again, the trial hasn't even started yet, but we've read some documents.
Suggest.
Yeah. I mean, we read some documents from Atalanta. We read some documents from Empoli, Udinese managers, Bologna. Yeah, it's big, and that's why they are actually investigating, not just to punish Juventus, but the integrity of the league is at stake. And again, it's Juventus' fault. If allegedly, it's Juventus' fault. So it's huge, and it's actually much bigger than, I don't know why. If anything, people are not talking about this enough. Because
it's the World Cup. I mean, the timing's quite good for Juventus of this sort of breaking, because it's not. I mean, if the World Cup wasn't on, this would be the story in European football, wouldn't it?
I agree, but again, it's like based on the Italian judicial system, this is gonna take a long time, years. Like the sports judicial system is actually faster, so I think we're gonna have some kind of decision in 3-4 months. But in terms of criminal proceedings, it's gonna take a while. It's gonna take quite a long time. Usually in Italy, it's like years, and they're gonna appeal the decision and blah blah blah. So it's gonna take a long time. But while they decide, obviously the acts are gonna be made public. So we're gonna be able to see what the
evidence is.
Yeah, the evidence is. So that's gonna be interesting. But I don't know, man.
I can't wait. I mean, I love The Wire, the TV show. Yeah. And so I love a good wiretap, and there's already stuff coming out about these wiretaps. And I mean, I don't know, man, like, is there a club in the history of football? I was tweeting, I got like nearly 200 likes on this, and I do think I was being a little bit provocative, but I do genuinely think, like, is there a dodgier club in the history of football than Juventus? And some people were saying, well, what about Man City and Paris Saint-Germain and Barcelona? And I think, well, with City and Paris Saint-Germain, there is different. This. Yeah, you're being bought by a regime that is, committing appalling human rights things. But it's a one thing that's happened. Because Juventus are these repeat offenders. It's like almost in the DNA of the club. This superiority. This no matter what. And what I can gather from these reports is, to begin with, the initial success that Agnelli heralded was legit. And what happened was that there was a gradual spiral of bad behavior. And it's almost, Shakespearean in this kind of like descent, and how like absolute power corrupts. It's almost like, what happens to Macbeth, really. The beginning of the play, Macbeth actually is a hero, and this power is this slippery slope, and he ends up, well, spoiler alert, but it doesn't end too well for Macbeth. Whether or not Juventus await a similar fate remains to be seen. But where would you recommend keeping up to date with these things, Michele, or are you just, looking everywhere?
No, I'm looking everywhere, but I'm reading, the mainstream media. Basically, there is the biggest newspaper in Italy is Corriere della Sera. And I'm reading, it's actually, if I'm not wrong, it's actually now owned by Torino's owner, which is Cairo. So, if anything, I can, because the other big one is called La Repubblica. And La Repubblica.
Who owns that?
Yeah, exactly. But I was
There's someone
surprised
with
to
the
see.
surname Agnelli, right?
Yeah,
Who
that's
owns La
right. They
Repubblica.
own La Repubblica, and that's the second biggest newspaper in Italy. I was surprised to read some very nice articles though on La Repubblica. I was very surprised. I would say that in general, like there've been no decision right now. There's been no definitive, proof of anything. But what I've been surprised of is, the my faith in the institutions, in the authorities, is actually restored, because I didn't believe it was possible for Italian authorities to actually prosecute such a big team. Like, you don't have to think about just Juventus. You're actually, Juventus is owned by one of the most powerful families in Italy. As we said, they own, like big, big newspapers, big everything. Like they own like Fiat, they own a lot of stuff, Ferrari, they own a lot of stuff. So for the police to actually investigate on Juventus and on the Agnelli family for months, and actually ask the judge to send them to trial, and to be honest, like while they were investigating, there were no leaks. Like no one knew about that, and they were
which added to the drama. It really was
Exactly.
just like the board resigned, and it was like, here we go. I mean, I've got for all the failings of Italy's prosecution and police and stuff, like any other country has these things, I've got a bit of a soft spot for a good old-fashioned bit of Italian investigation, which has happened like right the way through the ages. Anyone who hasn't watched the Sky Italia series on the rise of Berlusconi, was it 1992, 93, 94, documents some of the stuff brilliantly. So if some of the stuff that we're talking, Michele, obviously you live in Naples, you know a lot about this than me, but if anyone's feeling a little bit like, well, I don't quite know the background to this stuff, those shows are, I think, quite a pop and interesting place to start. And also, if you're thinking of starting to date any kind of like sports lawyer based in Italy, their listeners, now would be, I don't know, probably either a good or a bad time, because they're going to be very busy, so they're going to be earning a lot of money, but you might not see a whole lot of them. I don't know whether now's the time to go for it or not. What do you reckon, Michele?
They're very busy right now. They're very busy. They're giving interviews in radio shows, TV shows. They're everywhere. It's quite fun, actually. Like even during the World Cup coverage on Rai, which is the national TV channel, they're actually giving like this sport lawyer like 1 minute, 1 minute and a half, just to summarize the events of the day. Just about Juventus, obviously, which is quite fun. Again, on Rai, and it's fun how after this segment, the TV hosts actually they don't apologize, but they actually have to defend themselves. They actually say like, "Oh, we're receiving a lot of hate mail from Juve fans, but we know we would do that if it was any other team. So we have to do it. It's just the facts. We're just talking about what's happening." And I mean, this is where the power actually comes from, because the family is powerful, is rich, but the real power of Juventus, at least, comes from the people. Again, as I said, 40% of all football fans in Italy support just one team, which is Juventus, which means 40% of all football fans in Italy pay, are actually customers of the pay TV. They buy, Gazzetta dello Sport and stuff like that. So if you talk badly about Juventus, you are actually going against 40% of your customers. Yeah. Which is, this is kind of, like a vicious circle, because again, like Juventus does this thing. Again, Juventus is doing dirty things, has been doing dirty things for years now, like Mandragora sold to Udinese for like 20 millions, and Primavera players sold to Empoli and Sampdoria and blah, blah, blah for like millions and millions.
Genoa had a dodgy one as well, didn't they?
Right. A lot of teams, yeah. Caldara from Atalanta, a lot of things are coming out. And these things weren't really hidden, right? We all knew about that. No one could believe that, Mandragora was worth 20 millions and other players were worth like so much. Like players from the Primavera selling for 8 millions, 5 millions, 3 millions. Everyone knew about that. But again, when these things happen, no one really talks about it. Because again, if you talk about these things, then you are making 40% of your customers your enemy. So they're not gonna pay anymore. They're gonna cancel their subscription. So people don't talk about that, which in
But
turn,
that's courage. That's such courage. I mean, those investigators. I mean, it's where we go back to poor old Falcone and people like that. Like, that's real bravery. I mean, it's slightly different in that context because it's, you know, more violent, the crimes that are going on.
Yeah, their lives were at stake, but still,
yeah,
you know.
But still, I mean, it takes huge courage, I think, to and we don't know, and we probably will never know the pressures that these people will put under behind the scenes to quietly drop things. And probably in all of our lives, we have these moments where we could let something go because it makes our life easier, or we can stand up for what we think is right. Oh, it's getting a bit deep, isn't it, Michele? But I do think that whoever, you know, all these people, and half of them probably aren't on TV, who are behind the scenes making this happen, do deserve a lot of respect. Well, they definitely have my respect anyway, Michele.
Yes. Agreed. And please, keep going. Do your job. Don't disappoint us. And just, you know, like, find the truth. We don't want Juventus to be relegated if they don't deserve it. But we want the truth. And I mean, deep down, we know that they're guilty. Come on.
We just need, I'm just thinking of the wire. We need Lester Freeman to be following the money in a basement somewhere. Anyway, I'm sure somebody is. So that's quite enough Juventus talk on this show, in the shadow of Vesuvio. So we've got a big pile of questions, Michele. I've given you an incredibly small amount of preparation to answer these. But, you know, it'll be authentic, as we are, right? We're totally authentic.
Absolutely, 100%. Too much, probably.
Yeah. My authentic Neapolitan DNA shines out of the headphones into everyone's ears.
Yes, so I'm laughing because I agree, not because.
Yeah, of course. Should we start? This is a visual one, so it's a bit hard actually. But we're going to start because Sam, she's a listener that sent a question before, big fan of the show. I think fan or supporter of the show. Whether or not she is a fan or not is not for me to say. Now she sent in a question about there's a flag that's always being waved. So at every game, there are many banners, flags being waved about. Of course, Maradona's image is the most popular. I'm wondering, this bespectacled fella, chi è? Grazie and anticipo,
yes.
Anticipo e forza all things Napoli sempre. Now, I've sent you a picture. You might recognize it, folks at home. It's like a white flag with a blue image, guy in glasses, sort of looks about maybe 45. Who is this person, Michele? Please answer this question if possible.
Yes, so this is a question I get all the time. And the first thing I want to say is that if you don't know, like if you actually have been in doubt about what this flag represents, then you're not alone. And you're not alone. I don't mean other Napoli fans. I mean people who actually work in football didn't know what that was. I remember there was a TV show from like on Sky Italy, which is obviously the main channel for the main broadcaster for Italian games after that's on now. And when they were actually covering, they actually had a small segment about this flag, and the host of the TV show, who is now Gianluigi Buffon's wife, funnily enough, yes, Ilaria D'Amico, she actually said, this is a Maurizio Sarri's flag. You know, look at Maurizio Sarri's flag waving in Curva B. That was wrong. Funnily enough, that was very wrong, and she didn't know. She's like a journalist, and she didn't know, but she was just guessing. So you're not alone. A lot of people mistake that flag for Maurizio Sarri's flag, and when Maurizio Sarri was with us, I mean, it made sense. So people didn't really question it. It was like, oh, okay, it's a Sarri flag. No, that's not the case. That's not the case for two reasons. First of all, there are no flags, individual flags for players or managers. You can see a banner maybe about a player, but I mean, that's quite short. They just show it usually like if it happens before the game, and then they get rid of it in like 2 minutes. There are no permanent flags about players and managers for the simple reason, I think I've talked about it before in this podcast, but the simple reason is it's a rule. It's a Napoli Ultras rule not to make chants about individual players, individual managers.
And there's a particular expression about the shirt, right? What is it again?
It's just solo la maglia, just solo la maglia. So it means that you support the team as a whole. You support the shirt symbolically. You don't support the individual players because players and managers come and go, but the shirt remains. So it's a rule now. I am aware that it wasn't always the case in the past because obviously we have a lot of chants about Maradona, for example. But it is a case of the current ultras not to chant and not to celebrate individual players permanently, at least. Like we've seen actually banners about Sarri, we've seen banners about players, but no permanent flags. So who's that flag about? That flag is about Napoli Ultras called Pasquale D'Angelo. So Pasquale D'Angelo was a Curva B Ultras. It's a Capo Ultras, a Ultra boss. And he died tragically when Napoli was playing against Spartak Moscow. I don't want to be wrong about this, but again, it's not too important. He was attending a game. I'm quite sure it was in Moscow. It was in Russia, in a Europa League game a few years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I can't recall. But yeah, he died of natural causes. Like he had a stroke, I think. And he was a big Napoli fan. He was a Napoli fan. He's been a Napoli fan for years. He was leading, the Ultras in Curva B for years, decades. So once he died, obviously, the Ultras were devastated. So they decided to make a flag about Pasquale D'Angelo. So yes, he's not just a random. I've heard people saying. I think the consensus is that he's Sarri, and obviously now people have quite. Again, when Sarri was with us, it made sense, but now people are saying why? But Napoli, Sarri left you. He's managing a different team, and you're still celebrating Sarri. Yeah, he's not Sarri. He kind of, to be honest, I've never seen the resemblance, but people mistake him for Sarri. He's not Sarri.
Flags move around. It's hard to tell, but what I love about everything you've just said is that you say there's no managers, no players. And some Maradona just doesn't count in that. He's just so above this. Like he's just more than everything. So and that pundit wasn't Buffon's first wife, was she?
No. Buffon cheated on his wife with. I mean, obviously, it's US scum. Like that's you. I could talk about
the police are coming. Number 24.
I mean, he's been in some scandals, Buffon. Like he actually betting scandals. He used to openly bet on football when he was still an active. He's still an active player, and I read it.
Rumors about his political leanings as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I could talk about these people for weeks, because it's honestly I don't want to say it, but it's like what's wrong with Serie A. Yeah. I wanted to say something heavier, but it's really they're really filth, and it's like we should get rid of them. If obviously they're guilty.
Well, fingers crossed that's going to happen. Anyway, Sam, I hope that answers your question. Thank you so much for sending that in. Sorry it's taken us a little bit longer than we probably should have done to answer that. Brilliant. Okay, so now questions. Here we go. We have a question here, part of Napoli's increasing Georgian following because of our Georgian superstars. So this is from David. Hi, Henry. As half of Georgia is planning to visit Napoli games, we would like to get more info on Curva B and Curva A. Little bit of history. What was the difference between them? Is it neighborhood affiliation or something else? Which would be best for newcomers? Thanks. So what is the historic difference between B and A? And what do you reckon is the best one to go? I mean, you're a Curva B man yourself, so there will be some bias perhaps in this answer.
Look, I get this question a lot, and the quick answer is they are the same. They are the same. There's no difference. I believe that it wasn't the case in the past, because in the past the tradition was, if I remember correctly, I mean it was before I was born anyway. So, but in the past, in the 80s, in the 70s, the rule was, people used to go to Curva A if they were from the city, and Curva B if they were from the provinces. Okay. Or maybe the opposite. I think I'm right. But again, the answer is it doesn't really matter, because right now everything is faded. There is no clear reason why. I mean, myself, I started going to Curva A first, and then I moved to Curva B, but for no other reason that I liked Curva B better. I mean, there was no rule about it. People believe, yeah, I want to be with the ultras, so should I go to Curva A or Curva B? The answer is both Curva A and Curva B have ultras groups. They're different ultra groups, but they mostly chant the same chants. They chant in the same way. I would say maybe the biggest difference is that Curva A goes to all away games and Curva B doesn't.
Yeah.
So that's, again, it's temporary. It's just temporary because the away tickets are heavily restricted. And to get these restricted away tickets, you have to have like a fan card. And Curva A decided to get this fan card, and Curva B didn't. That's
as
it.
a political stance. Yeah. Which we looked at, I think, about maybe 10 episodes ago. We looked at this. So yeah, that's good. Just to pause, just to be, because there might be some people listening that have never been to the stadium that don't know anything about this. So just to be super clear that the Curve, is that the plural Curva?
Yes, nice.
Okay, so the Curve are the stands behind the goals.
Yes.
And where the ultras congregate. What are the stands that are on the sides called?
Distinti, Tribuna Posillipo, and Tribuna Nisida.
There you go. So when you are thinking of coming to Naples to see a game, you will tend to have a choice of, being in and amongst the ultras, behind the goals, or in the seats where you can see more of the game. And obviously there's a price difference that, generally speaking, the Curve tickets are cheaper than the others. But you get, when I've been with you, Michele, in Curva B, and you do get the full experience. And it was amazing. And that's personally how I would like to remain going to see games like that. So, but again, if you've got any questions, presumably about any of this stuff, Michele, you're the person to have a wee chat with, and you can give advice on what sort of experience you want as a fan going to the stadium, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have any questions, just send me a message on Twitter or WhatsApp. I'll try to answer. I'm a little bit behind on DMs right now because I'm taking a little bit of a break.
You've earned a break after the like 2 months that you had at the beginning of the season. Mamma mia. Okay, you watching the World Cup, Michele?
On and off.
Yeah. So this is a World Cup question. I'm not enjoying the Qatari regime and the fact that homosexuality is illegal and that human rights are terrible, but I am enjoying the football. Here's a question from Stephen. Thanks for sending this question, Stephen. I'd be interested in learning your thoughts on how you think the World Cup might impact the current run for Napoli. Which Serie A teams do you think might be impacted more gravely, if any at all? Now, I can't remember if I answered this or not, but let's answer it now because the World Cup's going on and we got a bit more of an idea of like how far our players have gone, etc., etc. Any strong thoughts on this, Michele?
Yes. So the way I'm looking at it is this: the tradition, let's say, for Spalletti teams is to start well in the league and do well in the first few months of the league, and then to drop, like a big drop in performance after January. That's usually, I haven't been following Spalletti for years, but that's what happened last season, and that's what people from other teams who have had Spalletti in their team have said, which is usually Spalletti's teams have a drop in performance after January. So in the second half of the season, let's say.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this, and I believe that with this big break that we're having, we are probably good. It's actually going to be beneficial for us because what Napoli is doing right now, they're in Turkey. They're basically in a training camp. What they're doing right now is emulating what happens before the start of the season. So you get all the players together, you go to far from Napoli where the weather is nice, and you train for 2 weeks heavily. You focus on tactics, you focus on the physical fitness,
team bonding, because we've got quite a lot of new signings that admittedly started very well, but this is it. They can consolidate some of those connections as well.
That's right, yes. And some of these signings didn't actually participate in the training retreat in summer because, for example, Raspadori came quite late. So Simeone as well, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I do think that this break is going to be good for us. Spalletti said so himself. So Spalletti said, the performance we were having before the break were frankly unsustainable. So it's good that we're actually having this break so we can, put some gas in the tank and we can actually focus on the second half of the season. So this is actually good. I don't think the World Cup, as in our players playing in the World Cup, is going to affect us too much.
No.
All players are already at Napoli. In Napoli right now, they've been eliminated quite quickly. So, I mean, I'm not sure that that's actually good for us, because some people might claim that, actually winning the thing could promote some sense of, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't have an opinion on this.
Well, I think the only point of comparison is when Koulibaly came back from winning the African Cup of Nations last year. And actually,
sad, yeah.
his head wasn't quite in the game. Like, we didn't keep a clean sheet for like 8 games or something when he came back. So, I mean, that's one example, but everyone's different, aren't they? I think my only concern is Kim Min-jae, who clearly was injured a couple of games ago and kept playing, and he wasn't fit against Brazil and got made to look very, very silly. But I think he needed a break. And so actually he's been knocked out. He's going to have a couple of weeks. I think that might actually be quite good for him mentally, because his performances, I mean, the last performance before the break, he was all over the place. So that could be a good thing as well. Other clubs, I suppose there's not been I mean, Brazil have got quite a few Juve players like Danilo and the awful left back that spits all the time. Not going to say his name. Leao. He's been coming off the bench. He's been getting 5 minutes and scoring goals, which is actually quite good for him. So, yeah. My only thought on this, Michele, what do you think? Having this big break, but then coming back away at Inter, that is an issue, isn't it?
I think what I believe is, for our players who are not used to winning things, I believe that if they actually won the thing, the World Cup, the sense of accomplishment would have diminished their katsima, let's say. And by now you should know what that means.
Yeah.
Their how do you say, their anger, their will to win again. After you win a World Cup, your dreams come true. And then you come to Napoli and you have to reset your mind, and you have to go into the mentality of, okay, I have to win another time. I know it's kind of, like if you're a Barcelona player, maybe if you are one of the big ones, but our players are not really used to it. Again,
just look at the France team that won the most recent World Cup. Look at the form of a lot of those players, like Kante, Pogba. A lot of those players, it did drop off after that World Cup quite considerably. So yeah, I think that's a good point.
I think it's very tiring mentally. If you go all the way, even if you win, you come back and you're tired, because you have to come back to your club, and you are not even at the middle point of the season. So you have to recharge your batteries, but you don't have time to recharge your batteries, because you have to play for your club. So yeah, so I guess, again, for our players, it was a long shot winning the World Cup, because they didn't play in very big teams anyway. But it's actually going to be good to have them this early, because again, they can focus on the real goal. They said, okay, we didn't reach our goal with our national team. Let's focus on what's reachable.
They might be even more hungry. Yeah. Okay. Good question though. Okay, we now got 2 questions, and then we're gonna wrap things up. But I have to keep an eye on the clock here, because I think, Michele, you can answer these questions over a very long period of time, because it's about your favorite person, Aurelio De Laurentiis. So here's a question from Sam. If, he puts in brackets, and if the size of Vesuvio, Napoli win the Scudetto this season, how far do you think that will go towards repairing / rebuilding ADL's reputation and relationship with the fans? Grazie.
It's hard for me to answer that, because it would mean I should imagine a scenario where we actually win the title, and I'm not capable of doing that. And I'm honest when I say that. So I don't know. I really don't know. It's hard to say. I do think that some part of the relationship between De Laurentiis and the fan base will never heal completely. just because De Laurentiis is very hard to love. It's very, very hard to love. He said some bad stuff in the past about the city, about the team. He's very egocentric. He's quite arrogant. So it's very hard to love. It's not just Napoli fans not liking him. It's basically everyone who's ever worked with him. They all say the same thing. And I have some rumors as well about, people from Napoli, people who've actually worked for Napoli, who don't have really nice things to say about De Laurentiis. De Laurentiis is actually not paying what he owes. It's actually, like, what I've heard is that when he goes to like a small business from Campania and he needs something, like, I've heard a rumor about fireworks. So there was some kind of event that we celebrate. I think I don't want to be wrong. It was like 10 years ago when we qualified for, I think, Europa League, maybe for the first time. I don't want to be wrong, but I think it was Napoli Atalanta. I was at the stadium actually. And we won against Atalanta and we qualified for Europa League for the first time. So I guess it was like 10, 12 years ago. And we had a fireworks show in the stadium after the game. And I've heard from someone who knows the owner of the company who provided these fireworks to the club, that the compensation De Laurentiis wanted to give them was just advertisement, like exposure, when you hire an artist and you tell them, I'm just gonna share something on my social media, I'm just gonna have your name in, I'm gonna tell everyone I know about you, but I'm not gonna pay you. That's basically what De Laurentiis did. That's a rumor, so I don't know, but I trust this person. So I've heard a lot of these rumors about, De Laurentiis going around. So my point is, it's not easy to be on De Laurentiis' side when it comes to, personal things.
Yeah.
But it would be stupid to claim that what De Laurentiis has done on the sport level is not an achievement, So yes, if De Laurentiis wins the Scudetto, it's gonna be hard not to thank him. But the overall relationship he has with the city, I don't think it will be good. After that, maybe a year. Time will tell. It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. It's hard to say also because I can't imagine such a thing happening. So we'll see. Maybe I will be the first one.
Yeah, maybe you'll get ADL's face tattooed on your stomach or something. I don't know.
On my face, yeah.
On your face. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I mean, I think we've talked about ADL a lot on this show, and what's been interesting, I think, from my perspective, is here it seems to be more of the respect thing, which is going to be tough. Some of the things that you said, and that stuff doesn't wash away easily, I think. Yeah. But let's see. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Sam. But it's a great question. Please keep them coming. And last but not least, and you can answer this as long as little as you like, from our dear correspondent Dan Bowen. Hey Dan. Dan writes, "Hey y'all. Does Michele actually believe the $1 billion offer for Napoli? And if so, should or would ADL sell?"
I don't know. I don't know what to believe. I mean, it's just rumors at this point. There have been a lot of rumors over the years about De Laurentiis selling the club to, Arab owners, Saudi owners, Qatar, Bahrain, Amazon, the rumors, actually Bezos is interested in Napoli. I mean, I usually don't believe this stuff. A part of me always wants to believe because we're never linked to poor owners. The rumors are always about, yes, this billionaire from America, from Brazil, from Saudi Arabia, all this kind of thing. So I would like to have such an owner in Napoli, because let's not forget that De Laurentiis is not really wealthy. The biggest thing he owns right now is Napoli. So if we have to make a big investment, for example, on the stadium or on anything else, a training camp, he can do that. It needs to be an investment coming from Napoli. So we can use De Laurentiis' own money. And I would like to see a new stadium in Napoli. I would like to see a new, training camp, a lot of even offices in Napoli, modern facilities. De Laurentiis, in my opinion, will never be able to afford that. So for this reason, I would like De Laurentiis to, sell the team even to shady owners. I'll be honest, I really wouldn't mind. Like, I'm against Qatar. I'm against all this stuff, but
what if the Agnellis decide, to sell their interest in Juventus and buy Napoli? You'd be up for that, Michele?
No.
You have some limits, okay?
Yes, I have some limits, but again, the point is they're gonna buy a club anyway. If the rumors are true, obviously, if they're in the market for a club, then they're gonna buy a club. So why not us? Big investment in the city will mean a lot of jobs being created. It's not just the sports. It's not just about winning titles. It's just I would like to see like more jobs being created in Napoli. As you know, Napoli is not really a rich city. So if we can get a big investment from outside the country, then I welcome it. I really welcome it. If it's a shady investment, I mean, sure, why not? Why not?
There we go. From my perspective, I just want it to happen in the summer once the season's over, because everything seems to be going all
agreed.
right. So we could do without the distraction. Anyway, well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed us going through your questions. Please do. We're gonna be a lot more regular as we get on with things. So don't give up on us answering questions. This episode, if anything, has proven that we do get there eventually. So, Michele, you've been absolutely on fire. You must be knackered. But one last thing I need from you is the Neapolitan expression of the week, if possible.
Yes, obviously. The Napolitan phrase of the week is linked to what's happening lately with Juventus. And, I've been thinking about why is it so hard to prosecute Juventus managers? Why is it such a scandal to even touch Juventus? I've been reading so many stupid takes about don't prosecute Juventus because this and that, and it's not. I've read a take. Obviously, they're all from Juve fans, or even worse, because I can understand if they are from Juve fans, kind of, but if they don't come from Juve fans, that why? I mean, why are you even defending them? But I read a take about why is the police always investigating Juventus? Why don't they focus about other things? The whataboutings about Juventus. I mean. The easy answer would be, if you don't want to be investigated, just don't be a criminal. Like don't get involved in your criminal, ways and methods. But I've been thinking about this, I've been thinking about my surprise of even having such an investigation in Italy about such powerful people, individuals, teams. And at the end of the day, it's always about money. It's always about money. It's always about power. If you're touching Juventus, you're touching your own pockets, usually. If Gazzetta dello Sport, which is not owned by the Agnelli, if they talk about Juventus, they are basically saying fuck you to 40% of their customers, or even more, because they are very North Italy centric. So, it's again, big things are going to happen, but the main topic is money. It's all around money. So the phrase of the week is about money, and the phrase goes like this: Chi non tiene denari va facendo zella. I repeat, chi non tiene denaro va facendo zella, which means in Italian would mean chi non ha soldi va in giro a fare debiti, which means like if you don't have money, you go all around town asking favors. Like you owe things to people, but people owe you favors as well. So this is what is happening. What has been happening with Juventus. They are, they have their tentacles in a lot of teams in Italy. A lot of institutions, a lot of authorities are afraid to talk about Juventus and prosecute Juventus because of money at the end of the day. So yes, hopefully.
So like those who don't have money go around asking for favors, sort of thing, or is it what does zelle translate as, would you say?
Zelle would roughly translate as debts.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Very, very, very suitable expression there. It's been good, actually. I haven't had a chance to talk to anyone about this Juventus situation, and like it's been nice to actually get a bit of detail. So thanks, Michele. Great. So if you're new to us, you can find Michele on at Napoli Tickets on Twitter. You can find me at Henry Bell Calcio. Just had a couple of articles published at the Gentleman Ultra website. Do check that out. Wrote an article about the all-time Italy World Cup icon 11. Some interesting players in there. Nice. This show is part of the Far From Vesuvius network at Far From Vesuvius. Do check out the other shows, the Napoli Rant with Raff and Raff, which is brill, and From End to Eye, all about the history of Napoli. And keep an eye on some of our other contributors, Ken and Marco, for their contributions. Thanks so much for listening. Take care. Wrap up warm, those of you that are cold, and take it easy. Forza Napoli.
Sempre.